Welcome back to Giza Direct. I'm here with my good friend Brad Olsen. We just got back from an amazing lecture series at Alien Event and Biomed Expo in Las Vegas. My first time to Las Vegas and also my first time speaking. And so, yeah, I just wanted to, touch bases with you, kind of do a little bit of a post-op of the event and see where you're going forward and your next adventures, Brad.
Well, hey, Hans, good to see you again. And yeah, what a great conference we just had last weekend in Las Vegas. And you gave a great talk, man. I can't believe that was your first presentation because you really had the crowd very well at every word you said. It was impressive. I learned a lot. And welcome to the conference,
Yeah,
sir.
appreciate you being there and the support. I was a little shocked to see that the room was full for a 9 a.m. lecture on a Saturday for a topic that nobody knows about. So
we had to see the debut, man. It was a pretty important milestone for you.
yeah, definitely. And it was my birthday. So yeah,
Yeah.
another trip around the sun, and here we are.
We were hanging out the table all the nights before, so we had to come and support you.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate that so much. So what were your takeaways from the event? What were your highlights?
Well, 4-day events are hard to keep the attention. Might have gone a little longer, although Thursday was kind of a half day anyways. I was just driving in from my ranch in northern Nevada down to Vegas in southern Nevada. So only caught the panel with all the speakers. Yeah, David Farman event. I've been doing his shows for about 10 years now. It's
Wow.
okay. I mean, it's okay. I'm glad he does these events. The world's a better place with David Farman and other producers. Things he could improve upon, things I've told him he could do better for marketing, but nonetheless, get great to hang out with you and meet you face to face and a bunch of other people as well as people I knew from other conferences.
Yeah, likewise. It was nice to actually meet finally, although I've seen Laura Eisenhower at many other conferences, to actually sit down and have a hangout with her and lots of discussions about her past and things on her plate. Julie come on as well. Always fascinated with her stuff. And Sarah Kozami, which she does like the hypnotic therapy and stuff like this, and I was really fascinated with her lectures as well. And so there were a lot of great speakers. Like you said, the problem with 4-day events is there's so many overlaps, and I kind of wish the format had been speaker, a little bit of a break, speaker, a little bit of a break, instead of speaker and then an hour into the speaker is the next speaker in another room. And so there were all these really crazy overlaps, but overall it was pretty amazing, and I got to see a lot of the people that I wanted to see, and was amazed with the turnout. My client, and I'm also a client of hers, Maria Shapley, was there doing intuitive coaching, and I thought that was awesome to actually see her in full form, and really enjoyed a lot of the people in the event space and the show hall, especially Dr. Fuji and his, his crazy vibration devices, which I actually ended up buying one, and I love it.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah.
Nice. Which one? The foot one?
The foot one, yeah. No, I use it literally every day, twice a day. It is one of the most amazing things I've purchased recently. So
I've gotten a lot of great products from these conferences too, including my infrared sauna.
Oh, you bought one of those
here in the shop. Yeah, I got one of those. He was displaying, and then I've got the Tesla skin zapper, and I still use that thing. It's great. And
interesting.
Yeah. So that's the other thing about these conferences maybe people don't know about is the vendors often are people and products you really don't see or find anywhere else. You got to come to these conferences to check them out, try them out, and maybe buy them out.
Right. Did you get a chance to use Emery Smith's the biotech?
One day, yeah.
I mean, obviously you got to sit in that chair for an hour, but I mean, I was really fascinated with what was going on there, and glad that he was invited to the conference as well. So
yeah, Emery Smith, that was a surprise. When I walked up for the first day, Thursday, meet the speakers and saw him on the table up there with you guys, I was like, wow, what's Emery doing here? And well, Johnny Enoch dropped out. So I think at the last minute
Yeah, he had a family funeral that he had to go to. His brother-in-law had passed, and so he was really kind of shocked last minute to do that. I was kind of sad. I wish we had hung out, but whatever. It is what it is, and
Got to hang out with Emery Smith, and that was great.
exactly.
He had some cool products, and turns out he lives in Vegas, so
Oh, he does. Oh, I
he
thought he
could
lived in
agree
Texas.
on the fly to come out there. Yeah, quite a few speakers and booth vendors are out of Vegas now. It's kind of a booming new conference town.
Interesting. I think Mike Barra also lives in that
That's
region.
right.
Yeah,
He just moved
interesting.
there.
Wow. All right. So yeah. um huh. What's next on the horizon for you? Where are you going next? Where
So
is he now?
where is now? What we're at October 1st today. In well, on October 4th, I'm going for a long bike ride and putting all my devices in a Faraday bag inside a microwave oven and trying to get out of cell range just in case. So be
Like,
going
I
on a long workout bike ride that day.
was gonna say motorbike or just regular
Mountain
pedaling.
bike. Yeah, I got
Oh,
an electric mountain bike. It's really
oh,
fun to
nice.
ride and got a whole bunch of trails out here in the Mason Valley where I live in northwestern Nevada.
I'll have to come
So
down
that's
and tool
happening at
around with
test
you.
state. Yeah, so I want to opt out of that and then maybe do the same thing on the 11th. But the day of the 11th, I do have to drive to the Bay Area, and I'm a co-producer in the How Weird Street Fair
Oh,
that's
whoa, okay.
up at Howard and Second Street in downtown San Francisco. So what I'm up to right now, really, this is the big project because we're less than 2 weeks out. So, whole bunch of little details and follow ups and making sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, basically, because one little detail could really spiral out of control with outdoor events.
Yes.
Really got to stay on top of it and backing up my partner and vice versa.
What exactly is the event about?
Oh, it's electronic music,
Okay.
DJ's Street Fair event, 24th annual. So it's longest running EMD festival event on the West Coast. It's one of
Interesting.
our claim to fame, called the How Weird Street Fair on Howard Street at
Okay.
Second in downtown San Francisco on Saturday, October 14th from noon to 8 p.m. So 8 hours of dancing on 8 stages.
Any
And
ecstatic dancing or anything like this?
no more DJs, house music, techno, psytrance.
It's
Right.
interesting that
Yeah,
that whole area is kind of where Burning Man came out of originally as well. And so you went to Burning Man this year.
I did.
Got stuck in the mud trap.
Yeah, I just got muddy shoes. It was way overblown. I can't believe the news reports
Oh,
I
they
was hearing, man. What fake news?
made
Ebola
it.
breakout, cannibalism. People are starving and running out of food and water. No, we didn't. Not at all. Fake news.
I kind of assumed that. I went to Burning Man in 1998, and it was
Oh,
very,
wow.
very, very different back then.
Yeah.
Obviously, the circle is huge, but now the circle is beyond huge. And so, yeah, one of these days I might make it back down there. So,
All
we'll
right.
see. Yeah,
We'll hold you up to that, Hans.
yeah. Oh no.
But then right after How Weird Street Fair, several couple days later, I fly to Orlando and leave my vehicle in the Bay Area to do the GSIC event. That's the Galactic and Spiritual Informers
Hmm.
out in Orlando, Florida, with a
Who's
lot of big headliners such as Michael Salla, Alex Collier, um,
is Billy Carson going to be there? Obviously, that's his
John.
neck of the woods.
That
But
is his neck of the woods, but he's not on the bill for this one.
interesting. Wow, that would be fun to go to. Huh?
Yeah.
Are you doing any other events in Vegas anytime soon? Or
Well, I told David Said Farman, the producer of the Biomed and Alien event, that I'd come back next October. So
that's in October. That's right. I'm doing the
13th.
promotional flyers for all that.
Yeah, a little more than a year away. And then he's doing another one in April in Los Angeles, and I'll probably be a part of that one as well.
Oh, good. I'll see you there. I'm
Got a
definitely gonna be
couple.
part of that as well. So
Yeah.
he was
Well,
he was
great. Are you going to give the same talk? You should. I mean, that was super
I'm going to
interesting.
give the Dropa talk that I did, connecting Buddhist mysticism with the star system of Sirius, and all across the board to the Dropa. But then he's asked me, because I had such an interesting turnout, if
Yeah,
I had any other topics to talk about, and so I want to get into the mystery of symbols and symbology and esoteric symbology and
that'd be
occult
very cool.
symbology, because this is more along some of my passions. Obviously, I do esoteric knowledge, ancient sites, civilizations, and occult symbology, and so I've been to a lot of different places. Oh, there we go, sacred
What do you know?
symbols.
So do I. In my
I need to get this. I should have, yeah, when I was.
symbols, sacred geometry. I love all this stuff.
Yes, awesome, wow.
Well, I'd love to hear that talk.
Yeah,
I'm
I've done a
glad to
couple of interviews around the magic of symbols, primarily the triangle, the circle, and the square, and so how these have played out throughout the course of history. Each one can have a modifier added to it, or multiple modifiers added to it, from dimensionality to color theory to even elementals, and so they all have different representations, but the square, the circle, and the triangle make up every single symbol that we see every single day. I mean, at one level or another. And so I think these are kind of the core magic behind a lot of what we consider symbology today, corporate logos. And then, my other massive topic is around esoteric knowledge that we find in movies and media. And although we're dazzled by what's going on the screen with special effects and, all the sci-fi aspects, there is so much esoteric knowledge that's being portrayed in movies these days. It's mind-blowing, and people just don't. I mean, it goes through one ear and out the other. People just don't see it, and so I'm trying to expose a lot of this. Obviously, standing on the shoulders of giants like Jordan Maxwell and Jay Dyer and even Jay Widener, who have gotten into a lot of these topics as well. But as a designer, I think I have a little bit of a different approach to it, because I'm witnessing this every day in my design work with companies that I work for. So yeah, it should be fun. I'm excited to go there and have different speeches other than the Dropa topic.
Yeah, well, good. Do them both.
Exactly. No, and
You
I'm super.
see
What's that?
pattern emerging and detecting different data points when they
Right.
use certain sacred symbols and sacred geometry. I don't think anything happens by accident, Hans. They're
Oh, of
doing,
course not.
yeah, as a way of predictive programming and embedding it into the mass media and advertising and so many other mediums.
A lot of it stems back to the Brookings report. So when we went into space in the 50s and 60s, NASA approached Brookings Institute, which is a think tank, basically, and said, how do we approach civilization if we find anything out there, whether it's ours from ancient past, whether it's somebody else's, or whether it's ours from today, such as a breakaway civilization. And Brookings was, a little harsh and a little critical, and they said the world would not be ready for this. However, like a faucet, if you start turning it on and having a drip, drip, drip of this information out there, eventually you can turn the faucet on more and more and more. And everybody will be so used to this that when disclosure actually happens, not this soft disclosure that we're seeing right now, but when they actually roll out real disclosure, I think everybody would be prepared. I think we're kind of there now. I mean, a lot of the younger generations take a lot of this stuff for granted, and I'm very fascinated by that. Where you're in my generation, it's just like, I'm a little on the fence, a little skeptical, kind of disclosure homeless, or politically homeless for that matter. And it's interesting to watch roll out. And so thanks to David Farman for having events like this where we do have a soft disclosure of sorts, or even a hard disclosure. There were some really interesting panels. You did the AI panel, which I thought was really fascinating, because the topics there were just right on par. And I think the question I asked was for Ishmael and Isaac Mars about they kept talking about Ahriman and Steiner's work, and so to bring that full circle with the eighth sphere, which is very much AI tech, and was predicted way back in the early 1900s. It's like, oh my God, where are we now with a lot of this stuff? So yeah.
Yeah, good observations. And also did the super soldier panel and
Yeah.
sat in on Mike Barra's panel about where we go from here and transhumanism and all the weird and wild stuff that's going on in the world today. That's another great thing about these conferences when they have panels. You do get such a really good, diverse viewpoint on some pretty heady subjects that you need some well-informed and educated people to answer upon. And I'm really fortunate to be in the moderator position, and I learned so much myself just from the other speakers and their perspectives on these very trendy and but also somewhat ominous trends, such as AI starting to take a foothold, and what transhumanism's all about. I mean, we always hear the glamorous side of $6 million man kind of thing, but
Right.
what if this starts to get away from us? What if we are starting to change the body's biology and synthetic biology and nanobots and things like that that are starting to appear could really take this in a different direction. So it's good to be informed on cutting edge ideas and concepts, where we're at and where this is going.
That's really interesting you say that, because obviously a lot of the technology that we've had in the past, we haven't really put fail safes into place. And we've said, oh, the future generations can kind of figure this out. But things are moving so quickly. We're in the quickening, so to speak, that I mean, it's just rapid fire. I always tell people, as I was saying to you, I went to Burning Man in '98, but prior to that, I was at Intel Developer Forum in Palm Springs. And the two items that were on display there, I was doing a lot of sublimation printing technology, but a lot of it was around these two major items. One was the Cray supercomputer, which, was the size of a Volkswagen bus, and, liquid cooled and whatnot. And it's a $40 million price tag. And the other item that they were displaying was silicon graphics, primarily because I think they had just launched Lost in Space, that movie that came out then, and their major sponsor of that movie was Silicon Graphics. Well, the computer I'm talking to you on right now is an SGI unit, basically, that costs 1/15 of the cost of an SGI unit, and
Wow.
has like 50 times the processing power. Where, these wonderful devices, this is two Cray supercomputers worth of technology sitting in your smartphone. And
Wow.
you pay $1,000 for the smartphone versus the $40 million or $80 million price tag in '98. And so the rapid fire of a lot of this stuff has been interesting. And my concern, like yours, is are we putting safeguards into place around these things? Like Neuralink, of course, it would be awesome to use Neuralink for medical practices and whatnot, and help people that can't see or can't hear, actually have an experience that they've never had before. But then the question is this runaway technology? Can it be hacked? All of a sudden you have a brain hack. Somebody's, reading your thoughts and your dreams and stealing all your IP. It's like, oh my God.
Neuralink connecting to the Starlink
Right.
network, connected to China, connected to
It,
somebody over the ocean.
it's happening so fast that
No.
it could take
Yeah.
off so quickly. And especially even with AI, it's like we have, all these chat bots, whatnot. And I don't know, you're on Facebook like I am. Every once in a while I get spammed by somebody that just created an account yesterday, but they have 150 followers, and a lot of them are people that I know. And it's like, who is this person? What is this person? Is this even real?
That's true.
But yeah, hopefully this technology doesn't go to the point where we're no longer able to visit ancient sites. I know there's a lot of thought going into doing like the Scan Pyramids program, and even Machu Picchu, where they want to do all these 3D renderings and 3D scans of these ancient sacred sites. And instead of you actually going to them, you now pay for an Oculus experience, kind of like what they're doing in Mecca for the Kaaba stone and the Kaaba building. You don't actually have to go there for your pilgrimage or your Hajj anymore. You can just put on your Oculus. They have a fake yoni in front of you, and you can touch the stone. And it's like, at some point, I think we need to go to these sites. I think we need to we need to get out and travel more. And the world wants us to be in these, little pods and 15-minute cities. But in reality, I think we all need to travel more, because once we see different areas of the world, we start to realize that the people of the world are just like us. Yeah, the governments are different, but the people under these governments are just like us. They want to get out, they want to explore, they want to see things that we've seen, they want to travel. And you and I have been discussing travel quite a bit recently. And we were just talking about the pyramids in Sudan. And I thought that was super fascinating, because I've always thought, like I was telling you, they're in Ethiopia, but this is all Nubian territory, and a lot of people don't even know about the pyramids in Sudan. There's like many. There's quite a few. Have you ever you've been to this area, or have you not?
I have not. It's in war-torn Sudan. It's pretty tough to get in there right now. But I know that Sasha Stone went down there right after
Really?
Conscious Life Expo
Okay.
earlier this year, and I saw some pictures he sent back. So he got in and out.
Oh,
But that's towards the headlands of the Nile. It's called the Blue Nile, once
right.
upstream about 1,000 miles, and they're very tall, narrow pyramids in Sudan. But about 500 miles away is Aksum in Ethiopia, and there they have these incredibly tall and intricate obelisks, as well as the in-ground carved churches of Lalibela and others. So Ethiopia certainly has its fair share of archaeological wonders. And isn't it interesting? They all have Egyptian flair. And I know
Right.
your show's named after Giza, so that should be very telling that that culture did extend outside the boundary of what we know as Egypt today.
I'm sure. I mean, obviously, borders are artificial and concocted by our governments today, but I'm sure a lot of these areas were expanded beyond. Ethiopia is definitely on the bucket list. I would love to go to Lalibela and see some of these areas. Aksum as well. I follow Graham Hancock a lot, and he talks a lot about the Ark of the Covenant being,
Yeah,
stored in Aksum. But as you were saying, there's one of the world's largest obelisks there that fell over recently, and
right.
it's larger than any of the ones in Egypt, which is really fascinating. It's like, who was building this stuff and when? And we don't really have an accurate history of a lot of this area, and so yeah, it would be interesting to see.
Have you ever heard of the Empire of Three Cities?
No.
Basically the control grid of the Western world for the last, well, at least 150 years.
Hmm.
And the commonality between the three is they all have obelisks. They all have that phallic symbol of Osiris. And so the three empire of the cities is Washington, D.C., which is the military power, and of
Right.
course, Washington Monument. You have
Rome.
the city of London,
Yeah.
yeah, with 1 square mile. It's private, like a micronation within London, and they have what's called Cleopatra's Needle, stolen from Egypt, and then St. Peter's Square in Rome, which has another obelisk stolen out of Egypt right there in the middle. So there's certainly occult visions of these obelisks in this power elite, that they like this old Egyptian stuff. In fact, Switzerland is said to be the bloodline of the pharaohs. Now live in Switzerland.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's this guy who does a whole series, and he called them the pharaohs of Switzerland, and he outs the whole Octagon group, which is Ben Fulford and others are starting to identify as the real control
Right.
structure. So right outside of Zurich, Switzerland, I know you like to travel and maybe even
I've been to Switzerland, yeah, but
look at this area right outside of Zurich, Hans.
I
It's called
will.
Zug, Zug, and
Zug.
it's
All
just
right.
mile after mile after mile of absolute palatial estates. Like the biggest McMansions, way bigger than McMansions, just really castles,
Wow.
estate after estate of estate. That's where the globalists live. And they, through Switzerland, neutral Switzerland, banking, privacy Switzerland, is really the brains and the money involved in these the Empire of Three Cities. What's also interesting about Switzerland is they provide the guards to the
To
Vatican.
Rome, yeah, to the
Guards, yeah.
Vatican. That's right.
So there's all these
Wow.
interconnected ways that this is how these global elite have run the world. Now, of course, you have Davos in Switzerland
That's
of the
all
Mother
WEF
Wrestler.
is
Yeah,
all
I
there
mean,
too. Yeah.
it's all one big fraternal family of these
Can't make
ruling
this stuff
elite
up. It's right there in the open.
right there in
And,
the
and then
open.
you have the renegade Egyptians through Meritaten Akhenaten's, well, I guess it would have been his oldest daughter. She fled Egypt or Kemet or whatever it was back then for Scotland, and she became known as Scotia. And so she brought all the Druidic class with her, and these were all the Druids of Scotland. And so there's a huge connection, there as well. And then you have Karnak in Egypt, Karnak in France. It's like what really is going on there? And then again, com or chem, this word, it transliterates across all of Asia. And so you have the Com Tibetans, the Cambodians, the Com people of Eastern or far Eastern China. I mean, it's just it goes on and on and on. And so are all these bloodlines, at some point related? Interesting that I never really tied Switzerland into that, but it really makes a lot of sense.
Oh, well, how can you avoid Switzerland? Because it is so much a part of the fabric of the banking elite. I did a book called Sacred Places Europe.
Nice. Okay.
Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland also has ties with the Knights Templar, who had a fleet of ships at the time that they were persecuted that rivaled any nation in Europe.
Interesting.
And those ships went missing, much like the U-boats after World War II.
Right.
Not accounted for.
Are coming up under
What's
the ice.
interesting about Rosslyn Cathedral, remember when Freemasonry came above ground about 250 or 300 years after the persecution of the Knights Templar?
Right.
One of the first above ground Freemasonry temples is the Scottish Rite.
Right.
So there is very good evidence. A book called Born in Blood really spells it out with all the data points and evidence that Scotland was one of these places, just like with Akhenaten's niece, a place where a safe haven where they could just basically start their religion, starting underground, but then eventually coming above ground. What's interesting also about Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland is they have represented in stone what looks exactly like corn on the cob, which looks like a corn stalk with all the corn.
Which is similar to what you see at the Vatican with the staff, what you see
pineapple too.
What you see in Sumeria, they're holding this, it's like cornstalk or a pine cone, they call it, and this is what the pineal gland also looks like. Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, and then so the what's so interesting about that is that corn, of course, does not grow in Europe, never has, never did. So the Knights Templar were likely among the first Europeans to land in
South
America of America and traded with the natives and tried out the corn and said, hey, this is pretty good, let's bring some back. And they memorialized it on Rosslyn Cathedral. I'm flipping through here to see if I have a picture of it. I could show it.
Having been to Peru, I mean, you go up into the Sacred Valley in Cusco, and they have 30, 40 different varieties of corn that all grow at different elevations. And so they were cultivating this for different cultures globally or for trade at some point. And corn is an interesting one. Maize, interesting. Wow.
So this isn't the maize in Rosslyn, but for your sacred symbols talk, there are hidden imagery and secret
symbols. Have to look into that. Yeah.
Shrouded in Rosslyn Cathedral. And this was a Templar chapel. And also on the other side of the Atlantic, there are a whole bunch of Templar engravings, petroglyphs in New England, dozens of them. I was on America Unearthed with Scott Walter.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We're talking about a different subject, but I know he has done quite a bit of research, and I have his book called The Hooked X that you find all over the place too. But he is of the persuasion that it was the Templars fleeing their persecution in Europe, going to Scotland, and that missing fleet also going to America. Scott Walter thinks that the very enigmatic Newport Tower, which some think was Viking built, others say that it was just a old stone mill, but it was on all the original maps of the very first Europeans that were charting and mapping New England, including Verrazano, who the bridge is named after in New York City.
Right. Wow.
The Verrazano was one of the first Europeans to map New England, and there it is, the old stone tower. So it's
there on the map.
The original relics of New England, of all of North America. And Scott Walter thinks that was a Knight Templar. I write about it in my book, Sacred Places North America, and I visited there. And indeed, you can see some Viking runic Norse words in the runic alphabet. You faintly can see them. So I'm kind of more of the persuasion that the Vikings built it, and they were about 250 years before the Knights Templar, who were about 200 years before Columbus.
Right.
So clearly some pre-Columbus European travel to the New World.
You mean Cristobal de Colon, because Columbus, is Columbia, and this goddess Ishtar, Columbia, Lucifer. I mean, it seems to go all around the world. We have so many different. I mean, here, even where I am in Oregon, we have the Columbia Gorge, the Columbia River.
Right.
Columbia. It's really interesting that, again, it's another symbology. That's interesting with Scott. I met him at Conscious Life Expo. What are your thoughts on Oak Island at all? Is that
Boy, they keep digging and digging and nothing ever comes of it. I know. Is that show even still on? It's like,
I think so.
scary.
That's weird. I've watched a few episodes. Oh, we found a coin.
Right.
But they had found a lot of engravings in the stone there as well that could have been Viking or Templar. And so
I don't doubt it, but they certainly made much to do about nothing.
They've hyped it for sure.
You could watch hours and hours and hours of that show and come up with a couple coins and a few engravings.
So interestingly, speaking of obelisks, they found one, what was it, in Lake Erie that was underwater that boats would, people would row up to and tie off and have their, Sunday brunches and whatnot way back in the day. But they did an excavation under the water and found probably something similar to a Stonehenge or
wow.
Or
I'm not aware of that.
Art map. Yeah, no, it's one of the Great Lakes. I think it's Lake Erie, but I've always found that fascinating because we're told that nobody ever discovered this continent. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's been discovered and rediscovered just like every other continent over and over and over and over again. Yeah, so what to do?
Nauseum, yeah. And still those stodgy archaeologists won't give an inch as far as any other culture coming to North America before Columbus, that the Native Americans were unsophisticated and savages and never learned the art of smeltering, which is really important because it is a sign of an advanced civilization when you can take two metals, heat them up at a temperature that would melt them both, combine them, and then come out with a stronger substance, such as brass and bronze come from copper and tin with other added elements to make a stronger blade. Right. That's where we get the whole notion of the Bronze Age. You see, because before that, it was only the Stone Age.
Right.
And the historians in this country say all the Native Americans, they were just Stone Age savages, and that was the go ahead for all the colonists to just take and steal the land and kill the Indians. You could murder Indians and it would be no big deal. Back in the 18th and 19th century, when we were just rolling over the whole Great Plains through the Rocky Mountains all the way out to
sad part of our history.
Called Manifest Destiny. It's part of the justification for stealing the Indians' land. But if you were to introduce the Native Americans with the art of making
Blacksmiths,
metal.
alchemy, right? Yeah.
That's right. And there is evidence there were furnaces, a place called Fort Ancient in Ohio. And I also cover that in my book, Sacred Place in North America. But it could very well have been a Nordic or other European settlement, because it's unlike any of the other mound sites or the Adena or Hopewell cultures. It's called Fort Ancient culture. It's so unique because they built walls and palisades, much like European fortresses. And inside this one mesa in Ohio, they found smelters, and they were working in metal. So that totally changes the whole perspective on ancient America and what they were able to do. And the publisher of Ancient America magazine, Wayne May, I met him at a conference once in St. Louis, and we went out to Cahokia Mounds and struck up a great friendship and shared some information. He writes a magazine every month, maybe it's bi-monthly. The whole magazine, Hans, is all of the out of place artifacts and other anomalies that archaeology is just totally denies.
Parts, yeah.
This is just Smithsonian Gate. They'll just come in, just like the giant bones, confiscate, destroy, get rid of them. We don't want to have to change the narrative. We don't want to rewrite history. And it's such a shame. It's really a crime that we aren't given the full story of who we are here in America.
As Joseph Farrell and why can't I think of his name? The guy that writes about parts, that they always call it quackademia. And so yeah, it's like we're kind of stuck in this. We're pigeonholed into this time frame, but it's like things just keep getting older and older and older, and it's like we got to abandon that thought process that humanity, sophisticated humanity is much older than 4,000 or 5,000 years. I mean, much older. Even in Egypt, you see some of the most amazing ancient pottery there, or it's not even pottery, it's stonework that's lathed, and it's like super thin. There in the museum, there's this piece it's corundum. Well, corundum is ruby. I mean, diamond barely even scratches ruby because they're almost the same hardness on the Mohs scale. And these are listed as being, 15,000 BC in the Egyptian pantheon. And so you're just like, who's making this stuff? How? When? How are you cutting corundum? That to me is just beyond fascinating. But there it is for all to see. And I mean, the dates are legit because this is, the strata that they found this in. And so you've got to wonder, how much further back do we really go? Are we, as Graham Hancock always puts it, a species with amnesia? Where did we lose our way? Was it the last ice age? Obviously we got hit by a massive comet or fractures of a comet or meteor, and this destroyed a lot of the elders, the people that had the knowledge. And we were left with basically sticks and stones and became cavemen and Stone Age again. Not really realizing how to create metals and how to utilize fire the way that we utilize it today. These are both amazing technologies that at some point it's fascinating that we still have them with us, but we've lost a lot of the origins of what we were doing with them prior to some of these dates. And so
of course, Graham Hancock is very outspoken about everything getting aged much older.
Yeah.
We've been told he always makes posts and speaks that everything gets older. It always gets older. And that's really the case because there's so many out of place artifacts, so many relics of a megalithic or build a race. I do one of my talks at conferences on it, that you see it around the world as well, Hans, as underwater archaeology.
Right.
How do you build a megalithic structure like Yonaguni off the Okinawa
Island? Yeah.
Yeah, unless the sea levels were
much lower,
14,000 feet ago. And that's what Graham Hancock says. Everything is just getting older and older and older.
It's like 10 kilometers off of the coast of India, where Dwarka is now, is the old city of Dwarka. And we would never know that it was there because the Indian government doesn't allow a lot of people to go diving in this area. It's fascinating that the structures they found map out to about the size of Manhattan. And so this obviously was above sea level at some point, but that would have been prior to 10,000 years ago, prior to the rise. I mean, during the Holocene comet impact event, meltwater pulse 1b, sea levels rose literally overnight. I mean, obviously not overnight, but I mean, it was very short period of time, 500-600 feet. And so 500 feet on a coastline is going to wipe out New York. I mean, most of the East Coast, most of the West Coast. Seattle would be underwater. Portland would be underwater. San Francisco would be underwater. LA would be underwater. And so the question is, how far off of the coastlines were these civilizations? Even here in Oregon, where I live, there are structures that are off the coastline that are ancient, that are underwater. And so again, it's like, wow, when were these above water, and why are we not telling? Well, obviously we don't know a lot of the history of these spots, but why are we not even telling the story that these things existed? Because it totally rewrites the surface, history of this planet for sure.
Exactly. And it's on all continents. I'd even say in Antarctica too, that you have signs of high civilization on this planet a long, long time ago. And it's just amazing that archaeology can't update itself. I mean, isn't that the definition of science? Is that you're always building upon new discoveries? The scientific method should be reproducible. That if I say, well, I found a Clovis arrowhead in my hills and there's others there, you could go out as an archaeologist and find those Clovis.
Right.
Then we would establish that, yes, the Clovis people lived out here in this valley too. And that's how you advance science and archaeology. But it seems that there's this block that it won't allow these new discoveries to date things older and older and older. And
right.
As you said, off the coast of India, also off of Gujarat, they're doing archaeology underwater and finding a whole city that, once again, could only have been built during the last ice age. Similarly, between Denmark and England and Holland is a place called Doggerland, all underwater archaeology. Oh yeah, that was
it used to be on maps though, which is interesting. It used to be on ancient maps, Doggerland.
Oh really?
Yeah.
We're out in the North Sea there.
Yeah, there it's not the Perry Reese map. It might be the Mercator map, but there is an island that was called Doggerland, which no longer exists. I mean, it's underwater. I mean, this whole area.
Or the mythical island High Brazil. You ever heard of that one?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And it was on the Admiral maps. I do my presentation about these maps of Antarctica that showed the continent many centuries before it was discovered in 1821 by whalers. That High Brazil was on Admiralty maps till about 1855, when they finally said, okay, there's nothing out there, take it off. But these mythical lands rise and fall, and I kind of wonder, maybe they are based on something that had been there, but maybe an earthquake dropped them below the surface. Or in the case of Doggerland, this pre-Ice Age civilization that had some kind of memory or name recognition that carried on years later.
Interesting. Similar to the Ring of Fire in the Pacific. I mean, a lot of Polynesia and Easter Island and Hawaii.
Oh yeah,
they were all connected in a ring of mountains and mountain islands. And as our world keeps jostling because of our tectonic plates and earthquakes and whatnot, water likes to find its balance, and so it's gonna restructure things to find its balance. And so a lot of these sites possibly are underwater as a result of that. Interesting. Even you ever been to Malta or any of this area at all?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you have the cart tracks that go into the water, and then
that's right. I have that here. And then the oldest megalithic buildings in all of Europe are on Malta. What's more, Hans?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I know Graham Hancock covers this in some of his books. I think it's Fingerprint of the Gods, but I went and checked it out too. There are caves in Malta that it's not a very high island. It's only 100, 200 feet above sea level. But these caves in Malta show all this mud, which pushed up Ice Age animals like giant
backs of the cave,
mammoths and sloths. Yeah, and pushed them in with mud. So it could only have been some catastrophic event, some mud flood or tidal wave that overran the whole island of Malta and Gozo and left these deposits in the deepest caves. So also signs that pole shifts and other cataclysmic events occasionally occur around the world as well.
I've always been fascinated, having been to Egypt twice, about the Ur Nile, which where the Nile is now, the Ur Nile used to be on the other side of Giza. So it would be in the middle of the desert, and it was huge, according to the old maps. And so it looks like, there was a huge flood aspect that came up and over and spilled into the desert. And this is why you have all these underground tunnels that go literally from Saqqara and Dendera all the way into Giza, sometimes 10 layers deep, because they were bringing the water from the Ur Nile into the Giza Plateau area through these tunnel systems. And I mean, it just beggars the question again, who's building these tunnel systems and when?
Yeah.
Because they don't talk about this in modern Egyptology. I mean, they won't even bring it up. And it's like, I've been down there with Brian Forrester. We went down 6 or 7 layers in one of these tunnel systems, and they keep going down further and further, and they're the size of semi truck, basically, could drive through these things. And so to me, that's incredibly fascinating. You go down into the Osiris shaft, and you're going down 4 levels into these tunnel systems. Even in the king's chamber, even in the Great Pyramid in the subterranean, there's a well shaft, but they don't talk about that. How far down does that go? I mean, I've shoved my camera over the edge and taken photos, and it definitely goes down another 2 layers, and there's tunnels that go off of that. But again, it's never talked about. It's just like a rubble pile in a lot of the historical descriptions of it. And so what are these? What was the purpose of these places? It's really fascinating. And how old are they? I mean, again, we don't really have a conscious understanding of how far back some of these structures go. And so
yeah, it's just so old and so ancient, and so much that is yet to be discovered.
correct.
That's why I love traveling, because you really can get into the fabric of a place you're at and inquire about certain things. For example, underneath the Andes Mountains are hundreds of miles of underground tunnels. And I one of the guys on my sailboat down to Antarctica 5 years ago, call him Luke Dog, he was packing through South America too, and got to know each other real well on this trip, and talked about our mutual travels through South America until we got down to Ushuaia and got on the boat to Antarctica. And we had both been to this town in Bolivia called Oruro. It's a big mining town. And I didn't know anything that Luke was telling me, but he was in a youth hostel, and somebody said, hey, we know a guy that's going to take us down to the underground network. There's one place you can go and get in.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay.
And there were carved steps down, and the people in his group chickened out. He wanted to go on, but he didn't want to do it alone. So they only went maybe 100 yards in, but the guide said, you go and you go and you go and you go, and you could very easily get lost and not come back out. So you got to be real careful to leave a string or a red trail, or you could get lost on there. But it's very real. There are hundreds of miles of tunnels below South America, and hardly anybody talks about it or knows about them.
There's a lot of tunnels in Nepal, where I grew up as well. I think we briefly chatted about this, but Kathmandu Valley is just littered with them.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
They started digging up part of the road to build the new U.S. embassy and some of these other places. They stumbled across old network tunnel systems, and there's shrines underground. And in the history of Kathmandu, especially, one of the kings was overthrown by his nemesis army coming through the caves secretly into Kathmandu Valley, and then popping up and taking out his army. But these cave systems seem to be just about everywhere, and there's kind of a wink wink nudge nudge in the James Bond movies with Quantum of Solace, where they're harvesting all the water from Bolivia and keeping them in these underground secret water aquifers that then James Bond discovers, and he's like, oh, interesting. But people think, oh, this is just the movies, when in reality, I mean, there is a lot of this stuff going on there. Even in the Sacred Valley under Cusco, there's tons of tunnel systems, but they're all boarded off. You're not allowed to go in them at all anymore because people have gone in looking for gold and never come out. So
Yeah. So many mysteries, Hans. So little
so
time.
many.
Got to get back out there and travel again.
This is, like I said, this is what I like to tell everybody. Just go travel, go get out of your comfort zone, buy a ticket somewhere, and go see another culture. Go on an adventure, because this will change your life. It really will. And it will kind of bring you into a more modern perspective of what our world is really about. I mean, we're all so similar, but we're divided by, media and politics and all these really petty things versus actually getting out into the field and seeing the world for what it is.
Yep, you got that right.
Well, Brad, I appreciate your time as usual. I know you've got other things to get off to, as I do as well. Once again, where can people find you, and what upcoming events can they find you at?
Oh, I will be at the Galactic and Spiritual Informers Connection in Orlando, third weekend of October. I think there's still tickets available for that.
Okay.
And I have another talk in San Mateo, California, middle December. And then a couple months off in the winter typically, and then starting up again with Conscious Life Expo in February, and Sedona event in September, and David Farman's events, which I'll see you at.
I'll be there as well. That's my next upcoming one, I believe. Is that there might be another one in LA in November that I'm going to, but I haven't quite been invited to that yet. Any new topics that you're researching, or anything along these lines?
I have some new talks that I'm working on, but I haven't announce them yet. So
not a worry.
To
be discovered.
That's right.
Excellent. Well, again, I appreciate your time, Brad, and thanks for doing this impromptu roundtable and follow up to our amazing event, Alien event and Biomed Expo.
Oh, happy to be on with you, and thanks for the conversation, Hans. Always really great to connect with you and talk about all these things we love, including all the mysteries of the world, as well as traveling to these far-flung places. So you and I have that in common, and all these other interests such as sacred symbols. So I look forward to hearing your talk on that.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with all this stuff, and I'm really excited to actually be able to share it beyond just what I had done at Alien Event. Well, thanks, and everybody, like, subscribe, the usual stuff. It helps all of us move the algorithm ahead. And we'll catch up with Brad at another adventure and have another great conversation. Excellent. Thanks, my friend.
All right, you bet. Good
Cheers.
talking.
Hello, all. I just wanted to end this interview with a little shout out to some of my affiliates that I work with. You always see me drinking the green juice. It's good stuff. So this is actually a product called Green 2.0 by Liv. I'm an affiliate of this product. I really enjoy it. I take it everywhere with me. It's hydration. It's mineral infused. It's really good stuff. Tastes like mint. Has a little bit of stevia added to it for some little extra sweetening and kick. But great product. Also want to give a shout out to Billy Carson for his Sapphire Gold, which is an amazing monatomic element. I take this daily in the morning, usually add it to my smoothies, or just take it on its own. It gives me vibrance and energy throughout the day, which is obviously needed. I work a lot, many hours sitting in front of a computer doing graphic and multimedia design. I wanted to give a shout out to my friend Michelle, who does Light the Light pyramids. These are all Oregon-based pyramids and very amazing. I use these in front of my computers to help absorb some of the radiation energies. And last but not least, I want to give a shout out to X39 from Lightwave. This basically, I use these patches on my neck and lower back. I've been in a car accident, or 2 car accidents, that basically broke several bones in my back. And this has really helped me through recreating stem cell innovation or basically helping stem cell regrowth in my neck. And so my neck is not as crunchy and as fused as it used to be. And I really enjoy this product. So just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. My book is available on my website, megamist.com. It's also available through Lulu. And so when you click on the link there, you can buy my book. It's about $22 plus shipping. And I appreciate all your time. Hit like, subscribe as mentioned, and it helps the algorithm move forward. And I look forward to seeing you all again on Giza Direct. Thank you so much.